everyone. Welcome to this episode of Highlights from the Permanent Collection. A few weeks ago, we did an episode on artist Michael Kennaugh, who we're lucky to have as a part of our collection. And he was nice enough to do an interview with us today. So hi, how are you?
Fine, fine. I'm glad to be here, and I'm very honored to be interviewed by the Dishman. And it's a great place. I have fond memories of Lamar and the Dishman.
That's great. I'm
Absolutely.
so excited that we can get a chance to talk this week.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about your work and what really inspires you to do your paintings.
Well, I've changed my philosophy on painting over the years, and back in the day with Newman and Lamar, he would always stress on picking on a theme. And so I would usually pick up a theme, like for my work through grad school in North Texas. I paint a lot of boats and oars because they are kind of like an icon of a maritime type of image
Mm-hmm.
that tied me into growing up in Southeast Texas on Bolivar and Galveston. And his family's from the Isle of Man, a tiny island off the coast of England,
Mm-hmm.
which I visited. So I was really kind of motif driven of coming up with a singular image and turning it in many different ways I could, and doing prints and drawings and paintings of it. These days, and then I changed my policy on the creative process when I left North Texas and I came after grad school, and I came to Houston to set up my own personal factory, so to speak. Picasso said at one point, you're going to have to kill your father, which means, man, that's pretty intense. Which basically you're going to have to do away with those that your former influences to find your true self.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really gotten rid of Newman because he is such a fantastic teacher and he teaches the truth. And his teachings were pretty eternal as far as easily adaptable to situations in the creative process. But I decided that anything could be fodder for inspiration, anything. And so I went back and just relied on drawing as my primary inspiration for paintings and sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to do very, very simple pared down paintings of just a few simple colored lines in order to study paint application, in order to study imagery in my drawing. And my first show at Moody in 2002, those paintings were like that, very pared down, very simple. Mm-hmm. So I stripped everything down to build it back up. And there was a recent quote by David Hockney I read. He said, I'm inspired just by seeing, just by looking. And I have adapted that, or I've just naturally adopted that anything is a possibility for an image. So I keep a sketchbook. I'm constantly writing. I'm constantly drawing in it. And not that I refer back to those drawings at all for paintings. I think once you do a drawing of something, it's lodged in your subconscious because you've done it and you remember it. Mm-hmm. And I think as I paint, these kind of memories to come out in the paintings over time, and which has allowed me to do more deeply personal paintings than I've ever had been able to do before.
Mm-hmm. You kind of touched on my next question, which was really about your color palettes, because they seem to be very specific and very everything's you can tell that everything's very planned out about your color palette. So I wondered if there was anything specific behind that.
That's a great thing. Newman always preached, paint what you know. And I don't think I would have this palette if I didn't live in Houston, if I wasn't near Bolivar and Galveston. If I lived in New York, I'd probably have grimier colors, I learned color actually from an English painter, John Nicholson, who was in the Royal Academy of Watercolorists. When I graduated from Lamar, my parents sent me to the Isle of Man for the summer as a gift for graduating from Lamar. And my cousin, who was the Speaker of the House at the time, Noel Kringle, and his wife is the island judge. And so Noel had an in to a lot of people of society. And one of the people that he knew was John Nicholson, a Manx painter. And John was mostly a watercolorist. And John at the time was maybe in his 70s. And so Noel arranged a meeting between us, and he drove me over there and dropped me off at John's studio. And John's paintings were mostly of boats and harbors, very much of the Isle of that you would see scenery in the Isle of Man.
Hmm.
But they were grayish greens, grayish browns, grayish blues. They weren't like paintings of the Caribbean, right?
Uh-huh.
We're talking the North Sea, the Irish Sea, very stormy and cloudy. And I kept trying to pick his mind about, well, how did you get this color? How did you get that color? What did you do there? How did you get that? And finally, he just said, one thing I can tell you, young man, is to never clean your palette. Diametrically opposed to what I've been taught.
Uh-huh.
And I thought about it, and he said, you know, for watercolors, it's easy to do because once that palette is dry, you can infuse water and
Hmm.
reactivate the color. It took about a few months later, I thought about it, and what a great conceptual idea, because John's color represented not just a singular approach to the easel, but his color represented a week, a month, several months of painting.
Yeah.
Several months. So color becomes a very conceptual idea. It
Mhm.
becomes something so deeply personal and engineered, and over time, it builds into something deeply more personal. So I kind of adapted that to oil painting to a certain degree.
Mhm.
And you know, you can't get away from blue because you're in Texas, these big bright blue Texas skies, right?
Right.
That unusual taupe color, brown color of the Bolivar sand, and the green of the oak trees. And so all of this kind of feeds into my head. And really, color to me, I don't really have any kind of plans for color.
Mhm.
Color comes to me through my drawing.
Mhm.
That through drawing of forms, then the drawing will suggest what color it may be. I don't know why, but I just go with that sense. I go with that intuition.
Mhm.
The works that you guys have called The Conversation,
Yes.
small drawing and the painting, was done
Mhm.
with Newton in mind, of
Mhm.
all the critiques and the conversations we would have. And when I first moved to Houston, that's what I was doing. I would do a study, and then I would do the painting
Uh-huh.
in in hopes that they would end up in different places, which they would.
Mhm.
I no longer do that now. I over as I send a show to Moody Gallery, then I start afresh, and usually my processes change
Mhm.
because of what I've learned in the studio. And so I no longer do drawings. I knew well, I do drawings, but I don't do any more studies anymore. I'm
Uh-huh.
allowing the paint to take over. So color really comes to me through the act of drawing, you know,
Mhm.
and through the act of the subconscious in a way. Um, and then once things get rolling, it's the marriage of warm and cool colors. And sometimes I'll pull a mixture in, a previous mixture, and then that red and that blue will tend to have a kind of an akin. It'll have a similar grayness or an acidity to it, which
Mhm.
I think helps me build my color, and it makes sense to me anyway somehow.
Well, I mean, it's really obvious looking at your work that color is a very big part of what you're trying to communicate. Um, and honestly, color is one of my favorite things as well. That was a little bit of a selfish question.
Oh, fantastic! Okay.
And it's funny that you mentioned the comment about palettes because I'm like not a real painter or anything, but I dabble. And one of my favorite things when I'm done with something is saving the little splotches of all the colors that I've gone through until I've gotten something. And that to me almost ends up just as interesting as whatever I've actually been trying to work on. So,
Absolutely. I think some of the most amazing paintings are artist palettes. You know
right.
what behind the refuse. Those
Yeah.
are fantastic. Yeah, paints. Yeah, yeah. I,
I wanted to ask, how did 2020 impact your work or your workflow, if at all? I saw on the Moody website that you did have some paintings from 2020, and I was just curious to ask you about that because I mean, I feel like it's just something that's always looming in everyone's mind, especially over the past year. So,
yeah, you know, it's such a crazy year. I was supposed to have a show in April of 2020, and Houston had shut down in mid-March.
right.
So I called Moody and I said, you know, can we get these works to the gallery before maybe art transportation companies will have to shut down? I don't know.
Hmm.
So we rushed everything to the gallery in time. before the shutdown, and that left me with somewhat of an empty studio.
Uh-huh.
The pandemic hit, and I worked in the Museum of Fine Arts, and we were shut down for 7 weeks.
Mhm.
With being through a pandemic, you don't know exactly what that means at the time. I didn't really know how that was going to impact our society, our city, our state, our
Right.
country. And so I thought, well, the first thing I'm going to do is stretch a really big painting and just, and just hunker down here
Just let
for,
it all out. Yeah.
and just work on this big painting. And I which is probably counterintuitive to most people, thinking, why are you doing a big painting at a time when the world is shutting down? But it's kind of like when the orchestra was playing when the Titanic was sinking, you might be something you enjoy. And but the word urgent or urgency came to my mind, and that made me change the way I painted.
Mhm.
Um, I used to paint in ways that were like webbed almost, where
Mhm.
lines coursing over massive, and so they very webbed. And I wanted to make paintings that were more immediate, because I felt like the urgency I felt was, we don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. We don't know
Right.
what this word really means.
Right.
And so I started to, of course, draw on my canvas, and started to do these big flat planar shapes to
Mhm.
get the image out quicker, to study silhouette of the images, to study foreground, background. And I started a series of watercolors just to understand, to get my head right, to approach this new way of painting.
Mhm.
Well, I ended up finished the painting in about 3.5 months, when I thought it was going to take a year. And while it was drying in the studio, I took a picture and sent to Moody, and we sold it like the next week.
Wow.
And then that just started an avalanche of the works that I could get to Moody for the show.
Mhm.
It was nuts. So in a very bizarre and kind of a guilt-ridden way, uh, it was a very good year for me for
Mhm.
moving work, only because I think people were afraid to travel, and so these people had money to, buy art. It's been a very crazy year, but it's made me more. I'm so happy being an artist, because it's a place I can be in my studio.
Mhm.
I can work it out in my mind with my sculptures and my paintings. And there's a solace there. There's a peace there, that I can deal with the stress of what's out there. Um, my father passed away 3 weeks ago of COVID.
Oh, that's right. I'm so
And
sorry to hear about that.
so thank you. And that was hard, because he was by himself. But that's when it really hit home. Like,
Mhm.
you know, so it's just I think being an artist is an honor, really. And we're very fortunate to live this life that we do, to be creative, and to hopefully some way give back
Mhm.
to society, give back to people that can enjoy our work. I mean, that just,
It's been really interesting. I know that you said in some regards it's been a good year for you, and I feel that basically is because, last spring we were in the same situation with the Dishman, which is a lot smaller, and we have a certain dedication that we need to uphold to students and professors, and that's one of the reasons why my student assistant and I started this kind of small video series, is to stay connected with people. And in a way, it almost caused us to thrive in connecting more with the community and meeting new people and getting to stay in touch with friends who, we've worked with, who, we don't get to talk to all the time. So it's been a really special experience. And it's also been really interesting getting to hear everyone's different perspective on how it's affected their workflow, or the kind of work that they have been focusing on, or just different things like that. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk with you about it, especially. And then lastly, yeah, if you want to show us some of your, I know you've got it all sitting behind you, but if you wanted to talk more specifically about anything, um, you can
Sure.
feel free to do that right now, or.
Okay, so that's the most recent painting, and it's about a 50 by 70,
Mhm.
and you can see kind of see that kind of green covering the black.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like these planar shifts of
Mhm.
edits and things over course, going over and under. And this one, I always kind of read that bottom green shape as like a clover or some kind of leaf, and then
Uh-huh.
the red kind of figurative or human body like,
Mhm.
and blue maybe about the sky or water. So I don't know. This thing was painted during the pandemic, and so I've been kicking around some ideas, whether it's going to be called the remedy. Vaccine came to my head, but that's not. I don't think that's good enough. So I'm still, So as I'm making a work, you can see I'm writing some things down on the wall,
Mhm.
right? So that just kind of keeps me in check of what's going on there. Here's some corner sculptures that I've been working on for about 10 years.
I
I've
wanted
never.
to ask you about your sculptures because I saw those online as well, and I just think they're so intriguing. They kind of give me like Calder vibes.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. Well, because who am I? These are four new wall pieces, and the idea behind these was that I was coming up with a primary shape. Like, see this little hook? So
Uh-huh.
all of these are hanging from a single point, and then everything else just kind of hangs off of that.
Okay.
So with these, the clarity, these are all wood of various thicknesses. You can see kind of various thickness of this, a little thicker than this. My father was a carpenter, my grandfather, so little keystone images, which is a carpenter joint. Sometimes I'll put that in there. So the clarity of these solid shapes are starting to happen in the paintings, right? I've always wanted the sculptures and the paintings to be linked a little bit tighter.
Uh-huh.
And then while I'm doing that, I'm just doing some pure line drawings, um, which show a lot of pentimento, which show a lot of corrections and edits,
Mhm.
erase lines. And so the clarity of these drawings and these sculptures help with the paintings very, very much.
I think that's such an interesting way to work because to me it seems like you kind of need this tactile object to feel out and think out with your hands, and then it comes out in the painting a little bit clearer.
And if I'm ever stumped on painting, then I normally go to a drawing or I'll go to sculpture,
Uh-huh.
because sculpture to me still feels like play.
Yeah.
And I can then, because the sculpture comes out through drawing. I'll draw on a piece of wood
Hmm.
and then I'll cut the shape out. And for me, the magical thing is drawing this out and then you cut it and then you're
Hmm.
holding the shape. And it's that, and then you can play with the surface. This is canvas mounted on wood with a rubbing of words. This is glued string that shows this kind of repeated wave image
I like
on the
that.
wood. And this is poured wax. This is poured wax over canvas with a rubbed image of plants. Um, and so, but you're right, it does help with the paintings.
Hmm.
And it also helps with the sculpture. Now, when my father passed away, I started doing these small paintings with kind of a really darker background.
Uh-huh.
And these series of 7 are somewhat going to be studies for a canvas I want to do that's going to be 6.5 feet by 12 feet. And it's going to look something similar to this type of situation,
Okay.
which is a darker background, because mostly my paintings are like this with a lighter background.
Hmm.
So I'm interested in how, well, here's the study for the painting I'm going to do. I don't know if you can see that.
I can see it.
Okay, so that's roughly and I've never done an oil sketch for a painting. I just had these 3 paintings and I screwed them together and started making this. Proportionally, it's about the same.
Uh-huh.
So I'm really kind of more concerned about the space that this black can carry and added more depth. And it's also kind of a frame of mind, you know. So I'm really can't wait to get started on that. But as you can see, I don't have much room in the studio
Right.
anymore. I'm kind of filled up, and I tend to, hang paintings up high as I need more room. Up there, if you can see by the windows.
Yeah.
So that's, but drawing is still the foundation that ties everything together from sculpture to paintings. It's always started off with a line, and I'm drawing, and I'm slowly, coming back with white to edit
Hmm.
and to wipe out this blue that used to be tied here to here. Now it's separated with this white, but then the white becomes a shape in itself. And so it's really kind of about the thing that what you feel is closer to your nature.
Right.
And I'm feeling that as long as I embrace drawing in my work, then I'm starting with the foundation of what I think my strength is.
Hmm.
That allows me to expand on my language and to work in a very consistent way, you
Hmm.
know. So I can't stress enough how important drawing is. And I find a lot of colleges are getting away from that. I find that drawing teaches you how to see.
Hmm.
It teaches you how to gaze. It teaches you uh, parts to the whole and relationships. And so basically, figure drawing is the end all be all. If
Right.
you can draw a figure, you can do anything. I designed and built my own house, a 3-story metal structure that I'm sitting in today, because I could draw the figure. And it's all the same. It's about parts to the whole. It's about form and functionality. So my work is basically about the drawn line, really.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today, and thank you for showing us around your studio. I know not everyone's is keen to do that, but it was very insightful, and it was also really exciting to get to see how you work.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And it was a real thrill to talk with you. And the best of Lamar and the Dishman. You guys doing great work down there. And if I can ever do anything else for you, just let me know. I'm always there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It was so nice to get to chat with you.
All the best. Stay healthy.
All right, you too.